Pinterest is very helpful, but a lot of the times Pinterest can be very unrealistic when you are working with a small budget. So I basically took my dream wedding and I minimized it down to the budget version, I guess. Hey guys, I hope you are doing well today. I'm so excited for this video because this is one that I've been wanting to post for a while. I actually had one already filmed about a month and a half ago and I never got around to fully editing it. I actually might insert a few pieces of footage from that film session to this video because I do go into detail about some things. If you didn't watch my last video, then you probably don't know this, but one of my dogs passed away and she was actually in quite a bit of the footage, so I wanted to include those pieces to this video. You guys seem to really love seeing my dogs in my videos, so she's here today. But if it's your first time at my channel, welcome. My name is Mara and I just got married this past June. So while it's sort of still fresh in my mind, I wanted to go over some of the details. The first video that I posted, if you didn't see it yet, I can link it down below. I went into detail a lot about pricing, about the vendors that I chose, kind of how I planned my wedding. And this is gonna go more into the aesthetic side of it. So this is gonna be like a montage of like all of the things. I really had no way of organizing this in my mind, so it's kind of all just gonna be scattered. Without further ado, let's get started. I have some of my notes right here, so I'll just be check marking things. Thank you also to the viewer who requested this video because I think it would be really helpful for everyone else to know exactly what my idea for my aesthetic of the wedding would be, and that's why I'm filming this today. Hi, buddy. Hello. Basically, the vibe that I was going for my wedding, knowing that I had a budget in mind, was very simple, modern, bohemian, a little bit of vintage. I'll talk a little bit more into where I got my vintage lounge rentals, which really added to the aesthetic of my wedding, and I'm so glad we did that. I knew that I wanted it to be I knew I wanted it to represent kind of like my house. I didn't want like a bunch of pictures of me and Alec everywhere. To me, that kind of can come off really tacky, and it has to be very tasteful in order to pull that off well. And so I just decided to cut that all out and not having pictures of us everywhere. The other thing was I didn't want, even though like my wedding was going to be outside and I wanted it to be very casual, I didn't want it to be any sort of like rustic or country type of feel, because I know a lot of people like that farmhouse look and I wanted to stay away from that. So the first couple of pieces that I bought for my wedding, as far as the decorations go, I wanted to make sure that I had something that would be able to communicate messages to my guests, of course. Like, for example, here we have the order of the day, and this is missing some letters. I haven't touched any of this since the wedding day. This one's a large letterboard that I used for pretty much all of my bridal festivities. For my lingerie shower, my bridal shower, I use this a lot. So these are really helpful, and I wanted to buy these myself and not rent them because I knew that I would use them again. These things are really helpful for most events that you're going to be planning. Like, they're just also very aesthetic and simple, and I just love them. You can also find them with like a white felt background. And then I got multiple different sizes. So for example, this used to say "You're My Hallelujah," which is a lyric from our first dance song called Touching Heaven. Touching Heaven by Johnny Swim. And I had that as one of Hi, babe. Hi. So I had this. I had like 3 or 4 of these, and then I had the big one for the agenda, I guess. What's that?
I don't know. Nordstrom.
Oh. Okay. Alex, say hi.
Hi.
For our welcome sign, I'm gonna insert a picture right here to show you what that looks like. I pretty much took the template for our invitations and just changed the words around and made it into a sign, and then printed it out using like a printing company in Austin. And then I bought one of these, what are these called? Easels?
Yep. Easels.
I liked that raw finish, so I left it unstained and put that white sign. It was like a styrofoam sign. All right, let's see. The mini letterboards came with these mini easels as well to stand on the tables, which was really cute.
No.
Okay, so moving on to flowers. I mentioned this in my first video. I used Bloom Bar in San Marcos because I have a friend that works there and she helped me out a lot. And basically we came to a conclusion that I wanted to do bleached florals. One, because it would be cheaper just generally, and two, I loved the way they looked. And then also another added bonus is that I get to keep it forever and it looks exactly the same as how it did when I was walking down the aisle. So this makes up a huge part of the aesthetic of our wedding because bleached florals is, I think, becoming more of a trend now, but this is called a palm leaf fan. And she added some, I don't know what these are exactly. Maybe it's some form of eucalyptus, I'm not really sure. And then some feathers, whatever these little things are called. And 2 variations of pampas grass, which I loved so much. And I have this leaning on the shelf, so that's why it's doing that, but. Okay, and then same thing goes for Alex Boutonniere and all the groomsmen's boutonnieres. Okay, so this is what his boutonniere looked like. Very simple and delicate and desert vibe-esque. And actually, I got a tattoo of it just about a week ago for my birthday. We got our wedding tattoos. He got my bouquet on his arm and I got this. I love the way the florals turned out. Aside from the bridesmaids and the groomsmen's boutonnieres and bouquets, I went onto 50flowers.com and bought a bunch of greenery in bulk. I think I chose True Blue eucalyptus and Seeded Willow eucalyptus. And that kind of was just scattered across the tables and in little vases. So that does it for florals. Hi. Okay, come here. He wants to show you his tattoo.
Ooh. I love you.
I love you. So another really cute little idea that I came up with on the spot, I think it was about a day, maybe 2 days before the wedding, and I realized I didn't have any baskets for my flower girls, and I was like, I don't really like, you know, the white wicker baskets that every flower girl has, and I wanted to do something very different and just simple. It's still simple, nothing like extravagant. What I did was I basically took 6-inch terracotta pots. I'll show you what this looks like too in this picture. They basically held their terracotta pots with the flower petals inside and just threw them from the pots, which I thought was a very cute idea. I was thinking about the aesthetic of my wedding ever since before we got engaged, so I was collecting a bunch of things that I felt like would go with the wedding. So things like cactus. I'm not a huge succulent fan, so I didn't really care to have succulents at my wedding, but definitely I wanted to collect a bunch of cacti. I only ended up collecting like a few of them, which ended up being in the entry table where the welcome sign was, which was very cute. Collecting things like baskets, kind of like this one. If you've seen my videos in the past, you've seen this basket before. Just things like this that you can find either thrifted or maybe at certain little plant shops, that kind of stuff. It's really simple. You just think ahead and you have your eye out on certain things that you like. Another example would be things like this snake plant wasn't at the wedding, but we used quite a bit of these seagrass baskets, and these aren't very expensive if you find them from the right places online. Like we had those seagrass baskets with pampas grass by the arch that we had for our altar, the candlesticks too. I collected 3 brass candlesticks. That's all I could find in that time. But definitely, if that's your vibe, be checking out Goodwill and just keep looking around. And then worst case scenario, you can rent them out typically at like a vintage bohemian rental. So I think the key decor pieces for me were the letterboards, the seagrass baskets, the extra greenery like eucalyptus, and then pampas grass. I'll make sure to link that below as well. Pampas grass can be hard to find at certain times of the year, so you'll definitely want to make sure that you keep that in mind. The lounge rentals was a huge part for the reception, and it was just a perfect place for us to take party pictures and for the guests to take party pictures, because I didn't want a cheesy like photo shoot type of area where it said like Alec and Mara and then the date. I just wanted it to be somewhere where it looked pretty for people to take pictures of their own. We did this beautiful arrangement that I styled and obviously rented those things out. Super easy. For our table arrangements, I wanted to make it simple. I wanted to choose just very whimsical, nothing too formal greenery to just scatter across the tables, and have little bud vases, little, you know, pieces of eucalyptus, feathers. All of that looks really, really nice, and you don't need to have a lot of it to make it fit the aesthetic. I bought a set of 3 of these in this sea glass color, and then also in a clear color for like $6 I think from World Market. So that was a pretty good deal, I would say. And I actually even use these glasses for like propagating plants. So they've definitely been put to use. This is just an example of what we use for our tables. We used that greenery and we laid it on top of cheesecloth. So I think the most pricey thing we did for tables was having cheesecloth table runners, which honestly wasn't too expensive, but when you have like 14 tables, it kind of adds up. But it was perfect. I think it looked so delicate and beautiful across the table, and it took up space. Instead of white candlesticks, we did black with the brass candlestick holders, and I thought that looked really cool. To be honest, like throughout that 6 months that we were engaged, I kept changing my mind about things like white candlesticks or black candlesticks. So another thing to keep in mind, if you are going to have your wedding in an unconventional wedding venue, I guess like a venue that isn't really for weddings. We had ours at our friend's brewery, and again, it was like acres of land. So it was a nice open field, and you could pretty much do anything you wanted. If you wanted a tent, which we didn't want, we definitely had to risk the weather because we didn't know if it was gonna rain or not. It was basically forecasted to rain like before and after the wedding, and praise the Lord, it didn't rain that day. So we didn't have to get like a backup tent or anything. But just things to keep in mind if you're gonna have an open outdoor wedding. Some things that we didn't want to spend money on that weren't like the biggest priority were definitely a cake and the programs and wedding favors or party favors. Wedding favors? You know, the things that you give your guests. We didn't really care to spend much money on that or any money at all. So what I did was I printed for free, made from a template, our wedding program on Canva, and then inserted all of the information, printed it out on regular printing paper, and that was just fine. And I can show you what that looked like. It's super simple. You can either do like a trifold or just a bifold. Because we led a worship song during our ceremony, we wanted to make sure that everyone had the words if they wanted to sing along. So we had that on the program. Again, I mentioned this in my last video, but we basically bought our cake from Whole Foods. It was the fruit chantilly cake, I think, or the berry chantilly cake, and it was perfect, exactly what I wanted it to look like. I ordered my candles off online. They were like the sparkler candles with our initials. And what else? What did I just mention? Yeah, no party favors. If we were gonna choose party favors, I probably would have chosen like mini cacti, but again, that would have been a couple hundred out of our budget, and I just didn't want to spend that. So with the whole bohemian desert vibe, we chose to buy a couple of vintage rugs for our home, but use them for the wedding, and that's what we did. We used one of them for the ceremony. We rented one with our rental lounge, and then we brought our other one that we used for our house and put it on the dance floor. So you'll see all of that. Really simple. I'm huge on interiors and interior decorating and home decor and all of that, so I knew that I wanted my wedding to look a lot like what my house looked like in a sense. So if you can see all these plants in the background, this is super messy, I'm sorry. You can see all these plants. Like, I had the majority of these plants outside at my wedding. Not all of them though, because they would have probably scorched in the heat, but I basically took what my house looks like and brought it outside and made it our wedding. And I thought it was a really great idea because, I mean, that was the aesthetic that is true to me and true to my heart, and I just feel like your wedding should really display like your personal style, you as a couple, and that was something that I wanted to hold true to. Being on a budget, you may not be able to have your exact Pinterest inspired wedding, but you can have touches of it. So I basically took my dream wedding and I minimized it down to the budget version, I guess. So I was always on the lookout to collect things that I found at Goodwill or any thrift store, or really just anywhere where they had little bud vases, candlestick holders, all of that. Do your collecting in the very beginning, because then you can accumulate enough without feeling like you're breaking the bank. A lot of the decor that I bought for the wedding, I'm able to use for my house now or for future special occasions or events, which is exactly why I didn't want to buy like actual wedding decor that said like Mr. and Mrs. or, you know, I don't know. That's just personal preference though, because then you end up having all this like wedding gear that you just don't know what to do with, or you want to sell but no one wants to buy it from you. And that's the reason why I wanted to be very minimal, and it really already went with my aesthetic anyway, just being minimal in general. So that was good. Let's see. So yeah, and if you can't find any of those like vases that you're looking for, if you're a beer drinker or if you like to collect beer bottles, do that. Collect beer bottles. Specifically, those amber bottles are really, really gorgeous and fit really well with the bohemian vintage aesthetic. So Coors Banquet has those like cool stubby bottles. Some ideas of what you can do for floral arrangements. I already had this vase in my home kind of sitting around. I brought it with me. Added a feather and some seeded willow, as you can see, and now it's dried, but it was fresh at the time. And then these are some more bleached florals. I have my palm leaf fan and then some fluffy pampas grass in a Coors bottle. Just the normal amber bottles. You can find them in different sizes based on like the brand of beer or whatever. So that's a good tip to think about if you're doing a DIY wedding. Just little simple things like that, I think, is what makes it really personal and really intimate. Our arch came from Bloom Bar as well. We had this beautiful copper metal arch for the ceremony for our altar, and I wanted to keep it very simple again because I feel like minimalist is a nice way of saying I don't want to spend that much money and make it super elaborate and intricate, but I love the aesthetic itself. So we decided not to put any florals on there because I think that would have been another $100 just like out the door. And I really just liked this simple look. And then with the pampas grass and the seagrass baskets on the sides, I thought it looked great. I like think back to my wedding day and how just perfect it was because it wasn't super extravagant. In my opinion, it wasn't super extravagant, especially like compared to other weddings that I've seen. And it just makes me really happy the way it turned out because I think me and Alec aren't very extravagant people to begin with. Lastly, I would say, and this is an obvious point, but the most physical thing you'll be taking away from your wedding is going to be your pictures. You want to make sure that you find a photographer whose pictures and their portfolio show the aesthetic that you're looking for, obviously. But the pictures came out stunning, and thanks to your photographer, you can remember all the memories through those pictures. Photography, I think, is really important because I love looking through wedding photos and I don't think they'll ever get old. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about my ideas, and if there's anything to add, please let everyone know down below in the comments and I would be happy to hear them as well. Let me know also what kind of videos you guys would like regarding the wedding, because honestly it was such a great and like fun season of my life that I do not mind going back at all and just thinking about everything that I did and everything that I planned out, that I had help to plan out and everything. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day, and I love you. Bye guys.